Let's go back in time to August 6th, 1945, in the city of Hiroshima, Japan. It was a normal summer morning. The sky was clear and blue, and the sun was shining brightly. People were getting ready for work, and children were sitting in their classrooms, starting their first lesson of the day. Everything felt calm and peaceful. No one knew that this ordinary morning was about to change history forever. Around 8 a.m., some people noticed a plane flying high in the sky. It was an American B-29 bomber. During the war, planes flying overhead were not very unusual, so most people did not feel afraid. Life continued as normal, and no one expected danger. At 8:15 a.m., something small fell from the plane. From the ground, it did not look scary at all. People could not understand what it was. No one on Earth could imagine that this small object was actually the most powerful and dangerous weapon ever created. For 43 seconds, the object fell silently through the air. Then, in just one moment, everything changed. A bright white light filled the sky, brighter than the sun itself. Many people did not even realize what was happening because their lives ended instantly. A huge fireball was created, and the temperature rose to nearly 4,000 degrees Celsius. In just a few seconds, around 80,000 people lost their lives. The city of Hiroshima was destroyed. This tragic event makes us ask an important question. Why did this happen? Why was such a terrible weapon used on a city full of people? To understand the answer, we need to go back a few years to a time when the whole world was at war. World War II began in 1939 when Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland. Slowly, more and more countries became involved. Soon, the world was divided into two main groups. On one side were the Axis powers, which included Germany, Italy, and Japan. On the other side were the Allied powers, which included Britain, the Soviet Union, the United States, China, and France. At first, the United States did not want to join the war. After the heavy losses of World War I, America decided to stay away from conflicts in Europe and Asia. They wanted to focus on peace and rebuilding instead of fighting another major war. During this time, Japan had its own big dream. Japan wanted to become a powerful empire, just like many European countries. They talked about creating a greater Asia, where Asian countries would be united together. But in reality, Japan was capturing land to control resources and gain power. By the early 1940s, Japan had taken control of many regions, including parts of China, Korea, Vietnam, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Indonesia. The Japanese army was very strong and disciplined. The people of Japan were taught to believe that their emperor was divine, almost like a god. Whatever he said was believed to be correct, and questioning him was not allowed. Even though Japan was expanding rapidly, the United States still tried to stay out of the war. Instead of using weapons, America decided to use economic pressure. The U.S. stopped selling important materials like oil, steel, and iron to Japan. This was a serious problem because Japan depended heavily on American oil to run its military and industries. Japan was now left with two choices. Either they could stop expanding, or they could fight back. Japan chose to fight. On December 7th, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, a U.S. naval base in Hawaii. Hundreds of Japanese planes attacked ships and aircraft without warning. Many American soldiers were killed, and several ships were destroyed. After this attack, the United States had no option left. America officially entered World War II. Soon after, Britain and China also declared war on Japan. In response, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. By the end of 1941, the war had spread across the entire world. Years later, Germany and Italy were defeated. Hitler died in 1945, and Germany surrendered. But Japan refused to surrender. Even after heavy losses, Japanese leaders were not ready to give up. Soldiers were taught that dying was better than losing, and surrender was considered shameful. This mindset would soon push the world toward one of its darkest moments. Even though Japan was losing the war, its leaders were not ready to accept defeat. One major reason for this was the strong brainwashing of the people. Japanese citizens were taught from a young age that their emperor was divine and chosen by the gods. Questioning his decisions was considered a serious crime. Obeying him, even if it meant death, was seen as the highest honor. The Japanese government also used culture and traditions to control people's thinking. One important tradition was the Bushido Code, followed by ancient samurai warriors. Originally, Bushido taught discipline, courage, and respect. During the war, this idea was changed. People were told that a true warrior is someone who is willing to die for the emperor. Surrendering was shown as shameful and unacceptable. Because of this mindset, many Japanese soldiers believed that dying in battle was better than losing the war. This thinking led to one of the most shocking strategies of World War II, known as kamikaze attacks. These attacks involved pilots flying planes filled with explosives directly into enemy ships. The pilots knew they would not survive, but they were praised as heroes. Although these pilots were shown as fearless, many of them were actually very scared. Some cried the night before their missions and wrote letters to their families. In these letters, they questioned whether sacrificing their lives was truly for the good of the country. But once chosen, they had no choice and could not refuse. The brainwashing did not stop with soldiers. Even civilians and children were being prepared to sacrifice themselves. Some children were trained to carry explosives and throw themselves under enemy tanks. This shows how deeply people's minds were controlled during that time. By 1945, the war in Europe was almost over. Germany had surrendered, and Japan was now the last Axis power still fighting. America decided to move closer to Japan by capturing nearby islands. One of the most important battles during this time was the Battle of Okinawa, which took place between April and June 1945. Okinawa is a group of islands located south of Japan. American forces landed there, planning to use it as a base for a future invasion of Japan's main islands. However, what happened during this battle shocked the American military. Japanese soldiers and many civilians fought with extreme determination. Kamikaze attacks happened again and again, and people refused to surrender. Even when defeat was certain, they continued to fight. Because of the heavy fighting and large number of deaths, this battle became known as the bloodiest battle in the Pacific War. During the Battle of Okinawa, around 12,000 American soldiers were killed and more than 50,000 were injured. On the Japanese side, about 110,000 soldiers lost their lives. In addition, more than 100,000 civilians were killed. Nearly one-fourth of Okinawa's population died during this battle. After seeing these terrible losses, American leaders became very worried. They were planning a full invasion of Japan called Operation Downfall. But the Battle of Okinawa showed them how costly this invasion could be. If so many people died on one small island, invading the main Japanese islands would cause even greater losses. American experts estimated that the war could last for many more years. They believed that up to 1 million American soldiers could die if they continued fighting on land. Millions of Japanese soldiers and civilians would also lose their lives. Japan's refusal to surrender made a ground invasion extremely dangerous. At this time, America needed another way to end the war. In April 1945, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt passed away, and Vice President Harry Truman became the new president. Soon after taking office, Truman learned about a top-secret military program called the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was a secret effort where scientists were developing a powerful new weapon using atomic energy. On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb was tested in the desert of New Mexico. The test was successful, and the explosion was more powerful than anything the world had ever seen. President Truman now believed that this new weapon could end the war quickly. Before using it, America decided to give Japan one last warning. On July 26, 1945, leaders of the United States, Britain, and China released the Potsdam Declaration. They demanded that Japan surrender completely and warned of total destruction if they refused. The warning did not explain what kind of destruction would happen. Japan rejected the declaration and still refused to surrender. This decision would soon lead to one of the most tragic events in human history. On the morning of August 6, 1945, an American B-29 airplane flew over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Most people were starting their normal day. Children were in schools, adults were going to work, and the sky was clear and blue. At 8:15 a.m., the airplane dropped a bomb called Little Boy. No one on the ground knew what was coming. The bomb fell for a few seconds and then exploded in the air. A bright flash of light filled the sky, brighter than the sun. In one moment, the city changed forever. The heat was so strong that it reached about 4,000 degrees Celsius. Thousands of people died instantly. Many did not even have time to react. Buildings were crushed, roads disappeared, and fires spread everywhere. People who survived the first blast were badly injured. Some were burned, some could not hear, and many were confused and scared. The city was covered in smoke and dust. Where homes once stood, there was only destruction. After some time, a strange black rain began to fall. People thought it would help, but it was actually dangerous. The rain carried toxic dust from the explosion. Many people who survived the blast later became sick because of radiation. Doctors and hospitals could not help much because most hospitals were destroyed and many doctors had died. Even after seeing the destruction of Hiroshima, Japan still did not surrender. Many military leaders believed they should continue fighting. They thought the bomb was just another strong weapon and not a reason to give up. 3 days later, on August 9th, 1945, America dropped another atomic bomb, this time on the city of Nagasaki. This bomb was called Fat Man and was even more powerful. It exploded around 11 a.m. and destroyed a large part of the city. Around 40,000 people were killed instantly in Nagasaki. Fewer people died compared to Hiroshima because Nagasaki had hills that reduced the blast, and some people had already moved away after hearing about Hiroshima. Still, the damage was massive, and thousands more died later due to injuries and radiation. In total, around 200,000 people died because of both atomic bombings. Most of them were civilians, ordinary men, women, and children. These events shocked the world and showed how dangerous nuclear weapons are. After the second bomb, Japan's leaders finally met to decide what to do. Even then, some military officers wanted to keep fighting. The decision was tied. At last, Emperor Hirohito stepped in and chose to surrender. This was the first time the Japanese emperor spoke directly to the public. On August 15th, 1945, Japan officially announced its surrender. World War II came to an end. Soon after, Allied forces occupied Japan and helped rebuild the country. Japan adopted a new constitution, became a democracy, and the emperor remained only as a symbolic figure without real power. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were slowly rebuilt. Today, they are modern cities, but the memories of the bombings remain. Survivors, known as Hibakusha, suffered for years. Many faced health problems, disabilities, and social discrimination. The atomic bombings created a huge moral debate. Some people believe the bombs were necessary to end the war quickly and save lives that would have been lost in a long invasion. Others believe it was wrong to kill so many civilians and that other options should have been tried. Even today, People around the world still argue about whether the decision was right or wrong. One thing is clear. These events taught the world how dangerous nuclear weapons are. Since then, no country has used nuclear bombs in war. The story of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is not just about war. It is a warning for humanity. It reminds us that peace is more powerful than weapons, and that such destruction should never happen again.